At the edge of a valley that had forgotten how to be green, Karim kept an orchard that had been his father's before him. The trees were small and old, their trunks twisting like the handwriting in letters his father had left behind. In winter, the branches held the memory of fruit. In summer, they held only heat. For 3 years the sky withheld its mercy. The canal that had been the pulse of the town was a pale scar. Karim walked the rows each morning, touching leaves that felt like paper. He cupped his hands in prayer at night, whispered into the dark, and waited for thunder. He bargained. He promised. He listened for a sign, any sign at all. His mother would ask, "How was it today?" Karim would smile in the way of someone who learned to keep his sorrow politely folded. He had a daughter with quick eyes and knees scabbard from climbing, and he had a wife who could find shade in the thinnest shadow. He wanted the miracle for them. He imagined a storm that would arrive like a caravan. Drums of water, sheets of forgiveness. He wanted what he had no power to make. One morning, when the sun had not yet climbed, but the heat was already awake, Karim walked down to the dry riverbed. There, an old man was lifting stones and setting them in lines. The man worked in silence, and straightened and nodded as if they had met each other many times in a dream. "What are you doing?" Karim asked. "Building a wall that will not stop anything," the man said. "Only slow it down." He smiled at Karim's expression. When the rains come, people think of roofs. When the rains do not come, people forget that water can be gathered even from air. He pointed to the stones. "These lines catch the night breath and let it seep into the ground." He patted a place beside him. "Help me. Your hands know the weight of wood. They can learn the weight of stone." Karim wanted to say that he did not have time for puzzles, that every hour without rain felt like a betrayal, that he had prayed. Instead, he put down his doubt and lifted the first stone. By noon he had memorized the feel of edges against his palms. The seams between the stones were like stitches. He understood nothing yet, but the work kept his worry from spilling everywhere. Weeks passed. The old man returned whenever dawn had not yet been invented. He taught Karim to stack and slope, to make channels that curved like the way a river thinks. He showed him how to dig shallow basins beneath the trees, and to bury clay jars with small mouths, so that the little water they could give would seep slowly and teach the roots to reach deeper. Neighbors stopped to watch. Some wagged their heads at the foolishness of building for rain that had not promised to come. Some stayed and lifted stones too. Children brought buckets with wet rags at the bottoms, mechanical comfort, and learned to listen for the soft drum of water descending through soil. A traveler passed through and slept in Karim's shed. Before dawn, she unfolded a net from her pack and stretched it between 2 poles on the ridge above the orchard. At sunrise, the air touched the threads and beaded into drops, which slid down into a waiting gutter. "Fog harvester," she said when she saw Karim looking. "Our grandmothers did it with woven branches. We forget, and we think forgetting means loss. It often means the hard work of remembering." Karim, who had been a man of small speech, found himself talking with strangers in his own yard. There was a quiet in him that had not been there before. He prayed still, but his prayers no longer ended at the ceiling of night. He would set his forehead against a trunk and murmur gratitude for a single new leaf, for a beetle that had found reason to exist again. The first time he saw damp soil where the stones rested, he thought it must be his eyes. He bent down and touched it. Coolness, a language he recognized. He did not shout. He simply closed his fist around a little of that dark earth and carried it to his daughter like a gift. They planted grasses among the trees to hold the slope. The old man taught them to read the wind, to see how it wrote on the land. "The wind says where to set your nets," he would say, closing his eyes as if listening to a voice. Every evening, a widow from down the road brought a pot of beans and news of the seed she had once grown near the coast, a hardy one that did not mind poor soil. She offered a handful to Karim without ceremony. He planted them around the edges, a hedge of humility against his longing. In time, the beans rose like small green prayers. They caught light with a hunger that was not desperate, only sure. A letter came one day from a cousin in the city. He had heard of the orchard and the stones, and sent a little money for new tools. The envelope smelled faintly of the shop where the cousin worked, a place with varnish and blueprints. Kareem bought a shovel with a handle that fit his grip like a thought he had been trying to think. He bought nails and mended the ladder steps so his daughter would climb without splinters. Still, he looked toward the sky every evening. He would be honest on nights when he and his wife lay quietly. "I still want it to pour," he confessed. She reached for his hand in the dark. "Of course you do. Wanting does not mean we do nothing while we wait." There was a day when clouds gathered like a council. The town held its breath. Wind came. Dust rose and wrapped itself around everything soft. The clouds tore themselves apart over the next valley. People swore gently, because anger had already cost them too much. Kareem went outside and tightened the lines on the fog net. He pressed his foot into one of the mulched basins and felt the spongy give of ground that had been made into a memory of rain. That night, he slept without asking the sky for anything. He woke before light, not because of habit, but because of a sound. Little taps. He went to the ridge. The net held 1,000 bright beads. They slid, gathered, and fell with patience into the barrel at the base. He listened as if to a whispered song. When true rain did arrive, it was small and polite. It smudged the dust and made the air smell like old books. The stones held it. The basins took it in. Water moved from sky to leaf to root, to a place beneath everything where no one could see it, but everyone could feel what it meant. Kareem stood with his palms open and did not ask for more. He understood that more would come again, and also that it might not, but that they would keep preparing as if it would. Seasons shifted. The orchard changed shape. Between the old trees grew new ones, not the same fruit as before, but cousins that could laugh with less water. Birds returned, not in crowds, but individually, like people who were finally willing to trust an invitation. At dusk, neighbors came with lanterns and scoops for soup. They ate between the rows, and children scattered like starlings. No one said miracle, because it felt like a word that travels too fast. They said the names of one another, and the names of the tools they had used. They said grateful in the way you say the name of a person you love. Karim's mother began to hum while washing dishes, a tune she had lost when the canal went white. His daughter learned to spot a new leaf from far away. She kept a chart of the first flower on each tree. She circled the day it rained lightly, then drew little lines for the days the fog net filled the barrel. Sometimes someone new would come by and ask about the miracle that had saved the orchard. Kareem would take them to the ridge and let them put their hands on the net, on the rough weave that caught invisible water. He would lift the lid of the jar that sat buried by the roots and let them see the quiet welling there. He would show them the lines of stones, how they curved like a sigh, like a word you say when you want to soften your steps. "I prayed for a storm," he would say. "My hands were not ready for the weight of an answer like that. What arrived instead taught my hands to hold better." And sometimes, when the sky did open and rain gave itself freely, he would go out and stand in it so that he could remember the boy he had been before the years of dryness. He would feel the drops on his face and think of all the times he had begged for this and had been given exactness instead. He would whisper thank you in a way that did not choose between sky and soil, between the God who hears and the ground that carries answers in its dark body. On a morning that could have been any morning, Kareem climbed the repaired ladder to prune a branch that reached into a neighbor's air. He cut and caught the falling limb, a cradle of leaves heavy with a small nest. Inside, eggs like oversized pearls. He placed the branch gently in his daughter's hands. "The trees will make more room," he told her. "We make room too, for water." for birds, for one another. That night, he unfolded an old letter from his father. The paper had thinned along the creases. "Water remembers," it said in that familiar looping hand. "It looks for a way. Help it find you." Kareem put the letter away. He sat outside and watched his daughter sleep on a blanket under the stars. He felt the pull of wanting again, the old ache that once asked the sky to fix everything. He let it be there. Then he felt its cousin, the newer ache that asked for sturdy work and companions, and the kind of patience that does not feel like waiting. He knew which ache had grown him into a different man. He prayed, not because he was desperate, but because prayer had become a kind of listening. He thanked the giver who had not sent a flood to fix what had been broken, but had sent instructions in the form of elders and strangers and stones that still remembered how to hold coolness. He asked for a heart like ground with good tilth, soft enough to receive, strong enough to hold. When he finished, the air had cooled. A small wind came up the valley and rode its secrets along the nets. In the dark, the barrel began its quiet punctuation. Drop, pause, drop. It was not spectacle. It was not the story he thought he wanted to tell. It was better. It was a way to live.